everyone. Welcome to the Unfiltered podcast, where we are having real conversations about church planning. My name is Stephenson, and my co-host here.
I'm Danny Parmelee, oversee church planting for Converge Mid-America.
And we're just excited to be with you today. And specifically, I think this will be a fun conversation, Danny, as we're going to just talk about what are the 5 dumbest things that we see church planners do that really hinder their ability to carry out the mission. So,
Yeah, and these are not from us, because we didn't make any mistakes when we planted a church. That's how we got into our roles, is we basically just did it perfect. And so none of these have anything to do with personal experience.
no, of course not. Other than my wife made a list of all these things.
And she only had 5? My goodness.
She put it on the refrigerator. No, I just narrowed it down to 5. But I mean, we'll just start it with it. So number 1, like the dumbest thing that I think I just see church planners overspend. Where and I would say there's multiple facets to where I see them overspend. One is they overspend on the marketing, just assuming, yes, marketing is important, but if that's all I need to do and get people in the door, and then all of a sudden I'm going to have a church of 1,000 people. And the reality is marketing is important, but there's so much more to building a church than just strong marketing. And then I would say the second is, and part of its marketing is the setup and tear down. It's just going full tilt and trying to have the sound system and the audio, the AV, the visual effects of a church much larger than a brand new church right off the bat, which I'm all for having quality and a great experience, but you can go beyond what's normal for a new church that's trying to get started, and you may only have a few people show up for that first Sunday.
Yeah, and I think that part of that drive comes from just the comparison culture. It's just so easy now, and you see all of these different churches. You're able to see the inside and seeing what they're doing on social media. It's like, oh, I need to have all of those different gadgets and gizmos and that type of experience. And it's just unrealistic unless you're just raising $1 million to do that. And even if you did raise $1 million, I think there's other ways to spend it.
Yeah, absolutely. So what would be a guardrail, or what would be some barriers that you would encourage a church planner to put into place to keep them from overspending?
This is where I think you just need good outside wisdom, because I think it would be hard because every situation is so different. You may have to invest more in sound and lights if you're in some sort of environment where you have to change it. Let's say you're in a school gymnasium and it's like, okay, well, we're going to, or we need 10,000 in pipe and drape just to kind of create the space where someone else may not need to. So getting outside wisdom and someone maybe who's been down the path say, yeah, that's a little bit too much, or why don't you, peel back on this, or sometimes maybe you do need to increase it as well too.
And sometimes they have creative ways of going, hey, if you actually do this, it'll accomplish the same thing, but it's going to be half the price.
Yeah.
So I think that outside coaching, I agree. And then I think even working ahead, having a realistic expectation, kind of write it down. This is how much I actually have to spend. So create a budget for, okay, here's what's going to go outside. Here's what we're going to be able to put into AV, and then stick to your budget.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, what were some of the other ones that you said? So you said, oh yeah, the marketing, and then sound. Any other big expenditures kind of in the beginning that you'd say?
Staffing. Yeah, I would say staffing, or setting up your own personal salary. I do think you got to come at it with a willingness to sacrifice. I don't think that means you know, can't go to the store and buy groceries to put on your table, but there has to be a willingness to sacrifice to get the church up and going. And so it's not like you come in and say, hey, I'm setting my salary at $120,000 when you only have $150,000
Right.
to put into the new church plant. I'm going to hire 5 people right off the bat.
Yeah.
That's great if you raise the money,
Yeah.
but you gotta make sure that the money's actually there.
Or if they raise the money. All right. So we're ready for number 2. So
yeah, number 2, go for it.
Yep. So making people feel guilty for leaving the church. This one is a one that's personal experience for me. It's one that I share all of the time. Guilt is powerful. It will keep people around for the short term, but not for the long term, and you'll run into some major problems there. So I just, not even kind of knowing that I was doing it, but if someone said that they were leaving, I was feeling rejected. I was feeling abandoned. So it's really easy to use some spiritual manipulation and tell them, hey, remember when you signed that covenant? This is like a marriage covenant. You're divorcing, and Jesus is against divorce. And what
So is
happened?
that your go-to line, Danny, right
Yes,
there?
yeah, I'm serious. I mean, I laugh at it now, but it is just sad, and, I should probably make lots of phone calls and apologize to people. But in my mind, I was thinking, people are leaving, they're on the verge of sin basically by leaving the church, and what happened is it just reinforced, people's reason for leaving, and instead, later on, once I learned what was happening and what I was doing and how prideful and egotistical and flesh driven I was in all of that, um, is that I started to just send people out and say, "Hey, thank you for your time. Hate to see you go." And what would happen is usually two things. One is eventually they would come back, some of them, small number, but even those that didn't come back left with a great taste in their mouth. And they told their friends, like, "Hey, I don't go to this church, but I did go to this church in the past, and it was really, really great. And you might like it too." And so get out of your own headspace. When people come and go, it's just part of it. Have a kingdom mindset, send them out with blessing.
Absolutely, I think that's great advice, and I think even in our history, I've come to recognize that God brings people to your church for a season, and sometimes it's a short season, sometimes it's an
Yeah,
extended season, and some of our greatest blessings were people that only were with us 6 months. They don't always leave well, but
right.
in the time period that they were there, they were a great blessing, and I think anytime somebody's leaving, look at that as an opportunity to learn from them as well, and ask some questions. Hey, I know you're going to be heading out. Are there things that we could pay attention to, that we could grow from, that I could grow from as a leader, that would help us move forward as a church? It'll be 50-50 whether or not you get something that's helpful, but
Right.
again, it sets the tone differently as they exit, to give a positive perspective as they walk out the door. And I would say, yeah, we probably saw, depending on the season, um, probably 25 to 40% of those people eventually came back.
Yep.
And sometimes it would be 2 or 3 years down the road that they come back into the church
Absolutely. All right. Go with number
after they
three.
made the rounds. So
Yeah.
number three, it's choosing the wrong meeting space as a church plant. And I think some of the biggest mistakes I see, Danny, when it comes to church planters, is sometimes they go to the cheap, and they just allow, hey, I can get this facility for $200, but the problem is it's outdated. Nobody knows where it is. It has a smell to it. It's hard to find, hard to get to. That is in the long term going to be a detriment to the ability for the church to be seen, and to even have neighbors, friends of the church, to invite their friends to be able to come and be a part of the church. Um, and so you want to think through what are central located places, what's going to be adequate. And I think for us, I know that at some point you experience, you kind of want to predict, man, we're gonna grow at like the fastest church in America,
Yeah.
plus 10,
Yep.
and so you think, hey, I need 1,000 seat auditorium day one, and that can become a detriment as well. You might have the
Absolutely.
best facility, but it's a good facility if you had a 2,000 person church. It may not be the right facility for you in the first month of a church.
Yeah, absolutely. And when people do look ahead, they're thinking, well, even if we grow into this and we won't have to change locations, like, you know what? If you have to change locations later because you're, growing like gangbusters, it's a good thing. You know what I mean? So
Yep.
don't try to plan in that sort of way. So I absolutely agree. The other thing is, if you are planning on attracting families, then children's space. I know we talk about it all the time, but it is really important because as a church planner, you're often thinking of that Sunday. Like, well, the auditorium is amazing. Well, the kids doesn't really work, but we can put four in the basement and two in the shed, and put a couple over here. And it's like, you know what? That auditorium space isn't as much what even many families will make their decision based on. So,
Great. And then I would say, little things like pay attention to the cultural aspect of the facility. If it has a negative connotation culturally,
yeah,
historically within that community, people aren't going to come as well. For instance, I know one planter that started, they moved their church to a mental health facility. Well, the space was nice, but People didn't want to be seen
Wow.
walking
Yeah.
into that facility on Sunday morning because they thought,
That's
what are people going to think of me if I'm walking into the mental health institution?
that is awesome. Is that church still in existence today, by
It
the
is
way? Is
not. It is
okay,
not.
okay.
So,
So,
but
alright.
the planter's heart was pure.
Yes,
So,
that's great.
um, number 4. So, why don't
All
you give
right.
us number 4?
Yes. Giving titles too early. So this is another one. Personal experience. We didn't have
Same
any
here.
money, so I thought, well, I can't give you money, but I'm going to give you the pastor of or title of pastor, title of director. We didn't do this because we were at least coached on this well enough, or calling someone an elder way too soon, and it can be easy to do that. So we always just say give responsibility, not title. It's easier to remove responsibility from someone than it is to remove title. So if someone is called youth pastor and all of a sudden it's like, wow, they are actually horrible with youth. To say you're no longer the youth pastor, you're essentially having to fire them, even if you're not paying them, type of thing. You're having to fire them where it's like, hey, we're entrusting you to, for the next 6 months to, engage with the youth. And it's like, hey, you know what? That wasn't working. Let's find another seat on the bus. It's just much easier, not only for them, but to explain to the rest of the church kind of what's going on. So give responsibility, don't give titles too early. Allow people to grow into them, to kind of earn them, to prove themselves first, and then give the title.
Yeah, leadership has got to be something you recognize. It's not something you appoint. And I would highly encourage people out there, like, protect the position of pastor. That is not something you just give out randomly and quickly. And same when it comes to what does it mean to be an elder, an overseer in the life of your church. Move slowly, and honestly, in the long run, this can be a better bet. And I paid that stupid tax as well. And if we can avoid anybody from paying that, that'll be a good
Yeah.
win.
I had 3 interns and, allowed them suggested to them the title pastor, and what I did is I actually set them up for failure because then other people were like, "I called the pastor today and he didn't return my call." Well, because the pastor was an intern and had a full-time job and couldn't live up to,
The
pastor
expectation.
to the expectation of pastor, and so it really was not fair to them either.
No, that's great. And number 5, I would say, dumbest mistake church planners make is just over programming. Um, they think the programs are going to be the key of what keep people in and get people engaged in the life of the church, and so they try to have what I would call the Greek menu of options for people that come in the doors of the church. It's like, yeah, we've got men's ministry, we've got women's ministry. Guess what? We even have ministry for your dog, and
Right.
they just list all these things, thinking, hey, this will be what keeps people a part of our church because we offer
Yeah.
things that nobody else actually offers in this community.
Yeah. And the other thing I would probably add to that is that you will have people coming to you saying, I want to start this ministry. And everything you've read in your leadership books is all about empowering people and, equipping the saints for ministry. Well, sometimes your most equipping word is no. Like we just can't,
Absolutely.
we can't do that, or we can't do that right
Right
now, so that
now,
you
yes.
keep it focused. So,
Yeah. And I think one of the things that helped us was just having the conversation with people. Like, we think that's a great idea. And we're not going to say no to you carrying out that ministry because let's be honest, most people come up with the idea with the expectation you're going to carry
yeah.
out their dreams.
Yeah.
Empower them but use this kind of idea. Like, I think it's great. It will not be a centralized ministry of our church, but we're all about decentralized ministry. And so
Yeah.
go create this. God bless you. We'll pray for you, and release them. But making it a centralized ministry of the church usually means that there has to be some type of person with responsibility and authority and budgetary items included into the
Yes.
process of
And
how that gets carried out in the church.
And communication space. Oh, I want to be in the bulletin on the website. Can I make a small announcement? Can I start recruiting volunteers from the stage? No, you may not.
No, you
So,
can't. Why? And they
yeah,
take it personal and get mad, leave the church, and take a bunch of people with them. So
yeah,
that's the nightmare of that. But 5 dumb mistakes church planners make, Danny. Hopefully, you don't make the mistakes we made for our listeners out there. But thanks for tuning in. This has been the Unfiltered Podcast, just real conversations about church planning. Till next time, keep it real.